Diddy is guiltier than a motherfucker. He is guilty for all of these charges, all of them. Because listen, I'm not a lawyer, right? But I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express once, right? And, I do watch a lot of episodes of Law and Order. And if you've noticed in this episode, I've done a good job of being a fair and impartial. So let me tell you why he's guilty as fuck, right? Because what the feds did was take elements of different things and then wove together a story that is completely plausible, right? When you have coercion, right? When you're paying people to do certain things, when you have people who are willing to say I was coerced, when you have the video that's out, what they're saying is that if it was just a normal freak off where niggas just flying bitches around, cool. But that's not what some people are saying, right? The question becomes whether or not those people are credible. Then the additive is, hey, you know what? You have an enterprise. You're a bad boy, you're a mogul. And so you're using your power in this enterprise, whether it's checks is being cut or whatever, further this illegal thing that you're doing. I was listening to another podcast and they reminded me that in Georgia, they ran a RICO on a teachers union. The teachers, I guess, apparently at the time was cheating a little bit. They were fudging up the scores, I guess, in some way to make themselves look better than what their performance of the students were, right? And Georgia, they charged them with a RICO, cheating, an exam. You understand? Because it met certain things. Now, there's a whole different argument of whether or not the feds or the state should be using these statutes that were originally supposed to be for mafia. But when you write law, right, into law, it doesn't say just for mafia on the law. It says, do you meet these various statutes? And if you do, and it meets that standard, we can bring forth this case. So I just want to say to all my brothers out there, I hear y'all in the case that y'all are making in regards to minimizing this to just being a domestic violence situation. But I'm telling you that in your limited scope, it looks a certain type of way, right? Because in the dynamics of a powerful Sean Puffy Combs dealing with a 21-year-old woman at the time, any reasonable person can say that, yes, there could be a power imbalance and dynamic. And even if she agreed in the beginning to all of the freak-offs, if there was a point where she decided it was freak off the freak offs or freak on or whatever the appropriate opposite of freak off is, right? She can make that choice. And when she makes that choice, if he continues to use the things that he has over her, like videos, right? Like money, right? She is now being coerced to stay in the relationship, right? And then if he's taking her to places and doing things and compensating her, right? Like her life, etc. What I'm saying is they got a case, right? So for y'all to think that this is just a glorified version of DV, S&M was right because they got more witnesses, right? So when she says my friend was being dangled outside the window or the 17th floor, that's coercive. I don't want to dangle from 17 floors either. You know what I'm saying? Right? The fuck? Maybe I was cool with it before the dangle. I was like, oh, you want to grab this semen from this nigga who just put it on me and rub it on your nipples? Yes, daddy. Right? Cool. But the dangle? It was a bit too far. The nigga was cool. He wasn't even trying to fuck for real. He's scared of you for real, dog. Like, now you got me out here. Can't even have guy friends because you want to be a bitch-ass nigga dangling kid. Excuse me, the gentleman from the goddamn 17th floor. Right? Now, here's the twist, though. And this is where, being the impartial juror that I am, I'm going to give my brother some credit. Because here's where I think the prosecution fucked up. There's a lot of shit going on here, fam. Even if I think legit they got a case, even if I think they can prove the case, I think the possible reason why Puffy will get off is because there's a lot of shit going on here. And it's not just regular shit, it's salacious shit. Right? If I wanted to pay attention to the evidence, how do I get past the urinating in the mouth thing? Like, how do I get past the rubbing the semen? Because for regular folk, we don't do that type of shit. So if you're watching it, if you're hearing about it, sure, there's evidence, but these are human beings, right? Who's going to look at this shit and be like, whoa, there's a lot going on here. And that confusion is going to make it harder for them, in my humble, non-legal opinion, for them to draw the conclusion that the prosecution wants them to draw because there's a lot going on. They're underestimating the salaciousness of this case. Like OJ was salacious to a certain extent because obviously it was murder, but in this case, you got sex, both sex freak off. That's why most of the things you've heard about has been about, you guessed it, the sex, except for the video, right? So
Right.
all I'm just saying, like, listen, for me, I don't know all the details. I know there's other people who are way up on this case, but if you think this is a cakewalk, I hate to break it to you, it's not. If you think it's just a amplified DV, it's not. I'm not even saying whether I think he's guilty of the charges necessarily. I'm just saying if you go back and read the statutes and what racketeering looks like and what the feds can actually do and what sex trafficking looks like by statute and how people look at it, they can draw those conclusions and have a credible case. The only question becomes whether or not the jury can see past all the sex and baby oil, right? Which is what Puffy's people is hoping, right? But we'll see. If I had to bet, and I'll land with this, because I'm pretty good. You know what I'm saying? When I do the third and short, the sports show that we do every Monday, shameless plug, my predictions are right. Not because I look at the evidence, but I understand human beings and human nature enough to recognize that people are simple. And they should have kept this case simple. So if I had to make a bet on it, he's probably going to get off or something reduced just because people are simple. But if you're asking me, my non-legal expertise, guilty, mucho guilty. All charges. You know what I'm saying? But go ahead.
I want to just sit here and take a moment of silence because sing an old Negro spiritual, like deep down in my soul, because we agree today. Look at us, shining, being big. I see you. I just want to add on a couple of more things because you really just took everything I was going to say and made it. About the sex workers, let's just be mindful that prostitution is still illegal, right? And then you have people who are still very much so saying, he paid me $6,000 to come out here and do these things. So it's very evident that he was paying people. And then the sex workers are saying they could tell that she wasn't into it. She's talking about sores in her mouth. She's talking about all the other things that regular vanilla people think are so far-fetched and out of the box that I agree with Nick when he says that it's going to kind of confuse people. But I also think that just the peeing in the mouth and the rubbing semen on the body alone is enough for regular vanilla people to say, oh, that's some weird shit and he's guilty, right? They're going to attribute it to something so far out of the scope of what normality is that that's going to likely be the linchpin in it. I agree. 100 witnesses, all these things. It's a lot going on. But let's be very clear. I pulled up the definition of RICO so we can understand, right? Racketeer, influence, and corrupt organizations. It's a variety of crimes, at least 2 predicate crimes committed within a 10-year time frame. The feds did not just start building this last year. This is not something that was just created in the last 8 months that we've been privy to it. And so it's important to know that 10 years of evidence has to be compiled before they come into this, and that Cassie is a component. Because I want us to take a minute and stop and think. In Puffy's case is a little bit different. It kind of refutes my point. But most victims don't gain anything by misidentifying or identifying the wrong person or an innocent person. Statistically, people who are victims of sexual assault, statistically, only 20 to 30% actually report, right? And so when we think about all these women who have been victimized and why they didn't come forward, because most of us don't. Because you know why? It's niggas around the world who don't believe us, who are in the comments and the chats calling her hoes and saying she was complicit, and they really don't have common sense enough to know what Stockholm Syndrome is, how people literally become victims and develop coping strategies in order to be able to function and live. I can't say no. He's going to beat my ass. I'm going to suck this dick and drink this pee, I guess. I don't know. But in the sense of saying that she felt she couldn't escape, we saw that on the video when he drug her back by her hair. So to say all that, I think it shows a lot about, what our mindset is about protecting women. And I also think that it shows the men out there who are creeps, and we should just be more vigilant and aware of who's saying what while all this is happening. That's just my 2 cents.